Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric and Chad here with Iraq Veteran 8888. Today we've got another Gun Gripe episode for you, and in this one we're going to be posing the question: is gun control dead? All right, now this is a pretty extreme question, right? Because there's a lot of different paths that this can go down. And I think we're going to sort of interject on a few things, and I hope that you'll join us for this episode. I think you'll really enjoy it, so stick around. I would like to take a moment before we get our video started here today to thank our friends at Sonoran Desert Institute for supporting Gun Gripes. If you're looking for a career in gunsmithing technology, reloading, more of the business side, they're a great resource. They have wonderful distance learning programs, great financial incentives. Their instructors are amazing. Their programs are on point, and they're put together by some of the best people in this country. Check them out if you're wanting a career in gunsmithing technology. Sonoran Desert Institute, SDI, and tell them that we sent you. Okay, so Chad and I were sort of bouncing around this concept earlier thinking, there are so many reasons right now that the Second Amendment is completely off the table in terms of a bargaining chip. And a lot of gun owners in this country, especially some of us that have been gun owners for a really long time, right? Many of us have owned guns our whole lives. I mean, you've got some folks that are in their 50s and 60s that have owned guns their whole lives. So there are a lot of different people in this country in terms of how they look at the Second Amendment and how long they've been a gun owner and how deep-rooted the concept of gun ownership is in their everyday existence and in their culture and in their family and everything. So it is worth noting that there are a lot of new gun owners right now. And we're going to acknowledge those folks here in this particular video. But the deep-rooted passion that people in this country have for the Second Amendment is not only there to stay, but it's growing at an unprecedented rate, right? There are more gun owners now than there ever have been in the country, in the history of this country. So you have to kind of think, after a while, you see all these pushes for gun control, whether it's, we're not going to talk about politics per se. This is just more about culture, right? Because as culture changes, so do the laws, right? Now, the difference, Chad, is that there's an unintended consequence that is sort of happening right now. One would think, oh, well, we want all of these crazy gun laws to pass, and we want more restrictive laws passed to circumvent aspects of the Second Amendment, or let's just say the Second Amendment as of itself, that it shall not be infringed. I mean, that's very clear constitutional language, right? So anything that a gun law gets passed, you think, well, that infringes on my right to own a gun. It says right there in the Constitution, hey, it shall not be infringed. I mean, that's pretty clear, right? There's an unintended consequence happening. The culture didn't change in the way they expected it to. That is where the rubber really meets the road here. You've got these out-of-touch politicians on both sides of the aisle, both Republican and Democrat, that they are so out of touch with reality and with their constituents that they think that this whole, gun banning thing and assault weapons bans and all of these restrictive crap they always talk about, right? They just dust off the old playbook, right? Remember, we've done it before. They blow the dust off and then they change the date and they move it forward. They're so out of touch with what people actually want. Mm-hmm. The problem is the politics are not changing to coincide with where the culture meets with that. Mm-hmm. And they're actually getting the opposite effect that they're desiring out of this, because there's a lot of people, both Democrat and Republican, that are going to their politicians and saying, look, we don't want this crap. So the culture's changing. And it's for the better.
I think that too many politicians, they assume that, gun owners are just a bunch of crusty old white men that live in the woods, that belong to the NRA, right? But as of late, we've seen that there are a multitude of different people from all walks of life, different political backgrounds, different skin colors, different cultures, that are all gun owners. I mean, we've said it before, but the Second Amendment is not just for white people. It's not just for one race, right? It's for everybody. It's for all Americans, okay? And this, as we've said before, this country is the great experiment, the giant melting pot. It's not like going to some European countries where everyone pretty much looks the same, right? I mean, this is the great experiment, and we're learning as we go. But as Eric mentioned, there's so many new gun owners now, a lot of minorities, blacks, Hispanics, a ton of women, right? And a lot of those people, they don't share the same political, ideals as maybe you or I would, right? But they do share that love of the Second Amendment in the respect of wanting to own a firearm for self-preservation, which is really one of the ultimate goals of firearms ownership, is having the tools at your disposal to defend yourself and your family, right? And just to make it clear, like we're talking more about like federal level, like countrywide things in this video. Now, when it comes down to states, just to make this clear, when it comes down to individual states, there is a such thing as states' rights, and we still do see certain states with assault weapons bans and more restrictions on firearms ownership itself. But some of those things are potentially going to the Supreme Court, like things like firearms owners' identification cards, heavy restrictions on magazine capacity in certain states. Those things are still in the fight, and we've got organizations like Gun Owners of America, Firearms Policy Coalition, FPC, that really do a great job in putting the fight really out there and putting their money where their mouth is, unlike other organizations that we've talked about in the past. But the thing is, Eric said, the culture is definitely changing, and it's shifting in a way that the mainstream pundits don't want it to. And that's why you see so many restrictions on social media with certain types of content, mainly like firearms, what you can talk about, what you can't talk about, because they're trying to sway the narrative in a certain direction. And we see that people are just blasting right through that because they know it's a bunch of bullcrap. I mean, absolutely bullcrap. So I think people are really starting to kind of wake up to what this 2A really is all about. And it's backfiring. The whole anti-gun plan over the past, say, decade, it's really starting to backfire at this point.
It is, Chad. And one thing that I'll add, too, is that's because people are going to be people no matter what situation
Absolutely.
they're put in. And here's the thing. If we get all in the same room and we say, you know what, we can all agree that the preservation of life is something we should all have the ability to do. And once you understand that at a basic human level, right, that we all want to protect ourselves, protect our kids, protect our communities, you may not agree that a firearm is the correct tool to achieve that task with, right? And that's okay. We can still agree that preserving human life should be something that we should all have the ability to do, and the responsibility that we have, right, is to preserve human life. So once you break down that barrier, there's a lot of people that realize, oh, well, you know what, maybe owning a gun is not for me. Maybe I shouldn't be a gun owner or whatever. But you know what? I can understand that at this bare bones, philosophical, deep-rooted level, we all have a deep desire to protect the people around us. And I think that as Chad said, this is a unique experiment. This country hasn't been perfect, right? It hasn't been without its faults. And there's a lot of folks that have had a bad run, and believe me, it sucks. And we understand, It's also one of those things that we've seen this country come together in a way that probably, I would say in my lifetime, now this is probably just my observation because I may not be as old as some of you that are watching, or some of you might be watching very young and maybe you don't remember this because you didn't live through it, right? So there's always going to be some change in perspective depending on how long you've been around, where you come from, your background. That's cool to recognize that. It's okay. But my perspective, I don't remember, the unity that we felt like around September 11th. People were so unified, and as a country, we were, super patriotic. And I'm not going to get into like the wheres and whys and wherewithal of, war and whether or not you agree with it. That's irrelevant. We're just talking about the bare bones patriotism that this country had in place, right? And I think what we see right now, we are on the horizon of another movement very similar to that, where I believe people are going to start, let's just say they are going to be rejecting the reality that is superimposed in front of them on this device and that TV screen, right? They're going to reject that reality and substitute it with the reality that they see with their own two eyes, the reality that they feel in their hearts, the reality they see every day in their everyday life. Where they're going to the store, they're going to work, they're doing their thing, they're dropping their kids off, they're going to after-school activities, whatever they're doing, all right, what you do have is the reality you see in front of you. And I think more people are waking up to the reality they can view and the reality they can assess. And they're rejecting this fake reality that's being driven under their nose. And I think that's what's happening. And I think people are waking up and understanding that it's not each other that we should be angry at or that we should direct our hostilities to. It's actually the people that are trying to divide us. And that division comes from all sides. And that the division has the same result no matter who is doing the dividing. It's them versus us. And, I think the sooner we realize, that we have to be unified in our message, unified in our rights, and that we have to, even though we might disagree with some people on certain ideas or ideologies, or we might have a very different approach on how we want to, look at the problems that our nation faces on a regular basis, the one important thing is that holistically, I believe people are starting to realize that the preservation of human life is something that we can all agree is our responsibilities, and we should all have the ability. And we should want that ability for everyone else. Just because someone disagrees with me politically doesn't mean I go, oh, well, I want to disarm this person because I'm worried about them having a gun because they disagree with me. Well, it doesn't mean they don't have a family, that they don't have people they love and care about and want to protect, right? Or it doesn't mean that they don't go to a dangerous place and need a firearm to protect themselves. And it doesn't mean that if I were at large with my firearm and I saw someone trying to do harm to them, that I wouldn't intervene and do the right thing. You're not going to give someone a political test before you choose to protect them or not. You're not going to look at someone and say, oh, well, that person doesn't look like me, so I'm not going to intervene. This isn't my problem. No, it is our problem because we're all together in this, right? We have to start looking at ourselves as Americans and not as whatever little corner they want to push us into. And I think a lot more people are opening their minds up to that.
I think so too. And, even though it may not seem like it, I think people are becoming a little bit more accepting of other people, just in general. I mean, and not being so childish with everything. If you have an opinion about something, it doesn't mean that you have to scream at somebody over it. Just accept their opinion and just forget about it. Just walk away. I mean, it doesn't have to stick in your brain and bother you all day long. It's just like, okay, well, they don't agree with me. Well, I don't care. I mean, if people just went around with that attitude of not caring, just sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And it's the same thing I tell my kids. But as far as the political spectrum goes, with these federal gun laws, I mean, we've seen in the past decade, we've seen multiple attempts to push through assault weapons bans, magazine bans, things like that, right? These just all-encompassing just gun bans just to fight crime, and get these guns off the streets. But we've seen them fail dismally. What we've also seen fail is a lot of pro-gun attempts, and it's unfortunate that things work out the way they do. Piss poor timing, with a lot of things. Weak people leading the House and the Senate, very weak. But it sucks. It sucks that we can't get more pro-gun legislation passed and gain some of the rights that have been taken away from us back. But we've mentioned in previous videos the reason why, it's not just 2A, okay, it shall not be infringed, things like the Commerce Clause. There's certain things that have happened in Congress that gives them the ability to regulate the Second Amendment, but not restrict it, right? And this goes on a federal and a state level. And we've talked about this in previous videos, and it's well documented out there, and it sucks, but it's a reality, okay? I don't like it any more than anybody else does.
But just like those things were put in place, they can also be taken away using the same exact mechanisms. We just have to make sure we're putting people in there that actually want to turn the levers of government in a way that give power back to the people.
You do.
Where it belongs.
Yeah. But we've seen recently, with the Congress and the Senate that we've had, okay, since this last election cycle, right? You've got a 50-50 split in the Senate with literally one independent, turning the boat one way or the other, right? Joe Manchin, okay? And that is a difficult situation for, a bipartisan agreement on any given topic, whether it be pro-gun legislation or anti-gun legislation or, pro-abortion, anti-abortion, whatever the topic might be. I really don't think, even in the future, depending on which way the Senate goes, I think that they would still have a difficult time getting the support for gun control in this political environment for the reasons that we mentioned before. Because so many of these constituents in more heavily like Democratic or liberal areas, they're gun owners too, right? So they don't want to see the guns that they purchased for self-preservation banned. They don't want to see magazine capacity restrictions that make them a felon overnight, just like anybody else doesn't. New gun owners, they just need to be brought into the fold and realize that there's advocacy responsibility that comes with being a gun owner. And this is also something we've discussed in previous videos. But anyways.
Well, both pro and anti-gun legislation, let's just say for the argument at the federal level, has been met with relative stalemate.
It has.
Whether it's anti or pro. So to answer the question, is the fight for the Second Amendment over? Is the Second Amendment a hot button issue with enough people to where we don't have to worry about it anymore? Well, the answer is absolutely no. Of course not. There's always going to be some potential infringement at our doorstep. So not to say that you should just bury your head in the sand and pretend it doesn't exist. That's not true. But the cultural change is in place to make it exponentially more difficult for them to pass anything to infringe on the Second Amendment, even this tiniest little thing. And I think that there's also a lot of political pressure that many of the folks on both sides of the political aisle, both Democrat and Republican, they realize that for many of their constituents that the Second Amendment is a hot button issue. Now imagine being, let's just say, a member of a party who is traditionally very anti-gun and is expected to be anti-gun just by virtue of the letter next to their name. All right, imagine being that person and then getting a bunch of angry phone calls when you introduce some piece of legislation where a bunch of your constituents are angry that you're trying to infringe on the Second Amendment, whereby traditionally your party has always been against the Second Amendment. So what's new, right? Well, the issue is they're all out of touch. They're working with a playbook that is 25 years old. That's the issue. They have not cultivated any new ideas to bring themselves into the fold with what people actually want. And I think that many of them might even find out that if they did listen carefully and attentively to what their people actually want, many of them may even find that not only philosophically are they so disconnected from the people they're supposed to be representing, but that if they were being honest about their policies and honest about what their constituents really actually want and cared about giving them what they actually want, that they're not the person for the job anyway. That someone else needs to be in there representing those people because they're not achieving a proper amount of representation. Both R and D. Doesn't matter which side. Both are guilty of being very, very much detached from the reality of what their constituents want in their everyday life.
So you mentioned the playbook's 25 years old, right? So some of these representatives have been in longer than that, right? So you want to talk about being out of touch. Have they really grown into that position and become wiser and more understanding of the cultural shift that's happened in this country? Or are they stuck in their old ways and just being stubborn old grumpy asses?
Or do they not care?
Or do they
at
not
all
care?
I mean, that's the thing is like, once the wheels of power are greased, and once they begin to roll down the hill and gain perpetual motion and speed, right, as they roll faster and faster and faster, it becomes harder to look to your left and right and see what the people standing around watching you roll down the hill. You're not going to notice someone's facial expression or what they're holding in their hand. Everything's a blur, and I think that's what's. I'm definitely not, covering up for their inadequacies. I'm just trying to merely explain, what could be going through their head. I think that their wheels are greased so hard and they're so hungry for power that they simply just don't care anymore. It becomes a game for them. And I think that's what a lot of what's going on both sides of the spectrum. And this is not just a left or right thing. There is a quasi-political power move that is occurring right now. And many of them view the Second Amendment as a totally reasonable bargaining chip that they can toss on the table and give up readily. Oh, we're going to place this really dangerous bet But you know what? It's just the Second Amendment. Who cares, right? No one cares about that anymore, right? Only crazy people in the woods with guns care about that. No one in my constituency that doesn't care about that. What could they possibly care about guns? But then they quickly realize, oh crap, you just placed a bet giving up something that's so precious to us. We have to make sure you pay for it. We have to primary you. We have to, we have to call and complain, and there's all these things. Now, all right, there is light at the end of the tunnel. All right, like Chad said, on this state battles, right? Now, I know we've kind of been talking just generally about the federal government and the federal push for gun control. We should always keep our eyes on that, of course. Now, there have been some good things done on the state level. One would argue that the real power and the real change really lies at the state level, okay? Look how many states now have constitutional carry, and how many states are on board to become constitutional carry states, including Georgia. Right now, there's legislation on the table that Governor Kemp has agreed he will sign if it hits his desk for constitutional carry in Georgia, all right? Georgia is just one of many states that has constitutional carry bills on the desk right now, and stuff's in committee. They've been assigned to committees, and they're going through, and they're going to vote on it. So it's not the end of the world, right? Yes, there are still some anti-gun things that are passing through on the state level, but there's also pro-gun things, right? Now, if we look at politics, let's just say 30 years ago in the Second Amendment world, right? Things were very different back then. It seems like there was just this overwhelming amount of support because the anti-gunners held such, all three branches, right? They had everything. They had the House, they had the Senate, they had the presidency, they had all of the wheels of power rolling in the way they needed to pass whatever they wanted to, right? But I think also gun ownership was not quite as much of a polarizing subject back then as it is now. This is not 25 years ago. This is not 30 years ago. This is not 50 years ago. Right now, as it stands, there's never been more support for the Second Amendment holistically across a broader spectrum of people, cultures, of races, of different political affiliations, what have you, different sexual orientation. Doesn't matter, right? People have come together and realized the importance of self-preservation and the tools necessary to that job. Everybody might not agree on the best way to go about it. Some people want more stricter background checks. Some people want stricter storage requirements. There's all, people have their own little, views as to how they think something needs to go. But at the end of the day, at least we can all agree on the importance of the Second Amendment and how that very important jewel should remain very untarnished and very sacred, right? So if we can at least agree at that bare bones, low philosophical level, right, the very, very low quasi-religious level, right, where it hits you in the feels, the importance of it, what it does for you. If we can agree on that, all right, some of the details we can work out as we go. And I think that's generally kind of where everyone really feels about it.
So, all right, in recent memory, as we've seen, all right, a lot of the overreaching, like assault weapons bans and things, all the complete crazy gun control legislation we've seen has kind of faltered, right? So what are they kind of pushing for now that we've seen recently? So you got I think it's S6225. I'll put it in the description box below, but it's a bill that's going through right now that affects federal firearms license holders like gun dealers and such, with more restrictive storage measures, more restrictive auditing schedules and things like that make it harder to deal in guns. So, okay, if you can't win on just getting rid of guns on the consumer level, on the private citizen level, then you go after the source, right? And we've seen that in the past. We've seen the Congress go after gun manufacturers themselves, trying to make them liable for things that happen, with their products in crimes and such as that. It would be the same thing like we've said before, Honda or Chevy or Ford being responsible for accidents that happen that are caused by drunk drivers or negligence and such as that.
They'd all be out of business if that was the case.
And that's the point. They want to drive the gun industry out of business, so there are no more guns to sell, and then
no more places to buy guns.
That'll solve the problem.
No more
right?
guns to sell.
But the thing is, though, like we've talked about in this video a couple of times, is the advocacy, right? So even though the gun control debate may be dead, based on the cultural shift and such as we explained, you still have to keep your ear to the ground and see what's going on, because we could wind up with something like what happened with the Firearms Owners Protection Act back in the 80s. That was a pro-gun piece of legislation, but the Hughes Amendment got tied to it, which was a fervently anti-gun provision, and there was a compromise made, and it got pushed through, and then it was signed. Okay, and we had no more newly manufactured machine guns that could be transferred under the NFA. So it cut that off for private citizens.
So
but look though, if all right, just for example, if you don't keep your ear to the ground, you don't pay attention to what's going on, then what could happen? All right, there might be a piece of pro-gun legislation that comes up on the pipeline, but then what are they going to do? They might tack on some like magazine restriction or some other provision that infringes on the Second Amendment right of everyday civilians, right, and everyday citizens. So you've got to pay attention to that kind of stuff, and you've got to know what's going on. You can't just ignore everything just because, not really hearing a whole lot about gun control lately, so I don't think they're trying to slip anything under the rug. But, like you mentioned,
they are notorious for slipping stuff under the rug.
oh yeah.
They are habitual rug under the rug sweepers. Okay, that's what they do. And, to say that the Second Amendment battle is dead, no, it's not. It's certainly on life support right now. But that can go either way, right? It can go from the pro-gun side and the anti-gun side. So it's important to stay engaged as a responsible and informed citizen. And that's the important part. Be informed, right? Don't just take all this data that's spoon-fed to you and then go, well, this is what I'm going to believe because someone's telling me to believe it. Or because my favorite, what do you call it? My favorite famous person, celebrity.
Oh,
That's
celebrity.
the word I'm looking for. My favorite celebrity told me to think this way.
I forgot about those.
No, that doesn't matter to me. But thing is, you should always be informed. First and foremost, informed. Make sure you look at all sides of an argument and make a logical and reasonable, conclusion based on your what you're observing, right? Observation. So I think more people are waking up to that concept. And as we said before on the state level, there's a lot of good work happening at the state level. Without going down this rabbit hole, I'll just say that not just gun-related stuff. There's a lot of other things happening at the state level right now regarding a lot of other hot-button subjects that we're not going to talk about in the scope of this video. But there's a lot of things happening even at the local, like those local elections are huge, like for the school boards, for your city council. Those are undergoing a huge change, and there's a lot of redistricting going on throughout the entire country because folks are relocating and moving, and district lines are being redrawn, and there's consequences to all of that, right? So when we look at everything under a lens of starting out with local government, branching out to state government, and then looking at the whole federal side, there is a lot of great work being done on the local level right now. And I would say that in many cases, it is happening for the better. It's going to take time. It's going to take effort. But there are a lot of folks on the local level and the state level that really are trying to do the right thing and trying to exact good, meaningful change. I mean, look at the constitutional carry bills. Lots of states now have constitutional carry, and that's only been a recent development. Many states didn't have constitutional carry a decade ago. And now here we are 10 years later, and look at the huge amount of states. I mean, one could even argue that in the next 10 years, maybe all the states will have constitutional carry. Now, maybe not the most traditionally anti-gun states, but the majority of the free world. I mean, it's happening. Right before our very eyes, we see a renaissance of ideas, right? And that renaissance involves like, hey, people don't want to be told how to live. People want to live free. They want to protect themselves. And they want to know that wherever they go in society, they can feel safe. They don't have to worry about relying on someone else for that safety, that they can be their own people, do what they want, live how they want, dress how they want, be who they want to be, and not have to worry about someone ruining their day or hurting their family or causing them harm or robbing them. I mean, look how scary the world's gotten. There's all kind of crazy stuff. There's kids, parents that don't even want to let their kids go out and play because they're worried about some crazy crap going on. So understandably, the world has become a scary place.
So has the world become a scary place? Or is it just that you are aware of it more just based on the way information flows these days?
Yeah. Or are you being told that it's scary. And I think that we tend to get a little bit polarized by the availability of information. There is such a free flow of plenty of disasters to look at that after a while you think, well, wow, this is just crazy. But you have to remember how just freakishly large the United States is, how many cities there are, and there's so much going on at just everyone's doorstep that it can be overwhelming, right? And it's easy to sort of forget that you've got a life to live too. You've got to take care of your kids and spend time with them and bring them up properly and make sure they understand the importance of the Second Amendment, and your family and friends understand the importance of it. And you got to change hearts and minds at that level first. You can't be worried about this moral conflict that might, one, be irrelevant, or two, might not even be real to begin with, right? You're worried about this moral conflict that's irrelevant, when really the real conflict is sitting right in your living room, right there with you. And I don't mean a conflict as in like a bad, but I'm saying the conflict, the inner conflict you need to have is, how are you going to raise people and influence the people around you in a way that makes their lives better and allows them to protect themselves and want to protect themselves. And I think that it really is coming to that point for a lot of people. There's a heck of a lot of people that have come to the realization that, the police ain't always going to be there to protect you.
Yep.
I mean, many of them do good work and they mean well, and a lot of them are, all right, look at the Twitter video I saw the other day of the dudes in LAPD pulling the old man out of the plane. He wrecked his plane, and the plane wound up on the train tracks. And they pulled him out of that plane not seconds before a train smashed into the plane and destroyed it. I mean, talk about bad luck and good luck, right? Now, those dudes risked their lives to protect that guy. So, look, the cops do good work. Like, when put in a challenging position, they do the right thing at every cost whenever possible. I know that. I know that many of them mean well. But you can have all the well-meaning in the world, but it don't mean that if you're in a bad situation, someone's trying to hurt you, that there's going to be somebody standing right around the corner. They're going to be 10 minutes away. You're going to be a white chalk line on the ground before they get there. Just something to think about. No matter what you think about the law enforcement or all that, I mean, all these people have all these different views about it. Just, that's irrelevant. It's just as irrelevant about the cops being right around the corner as it is your buddy with a gun. Who does it matter? Either you got a gun or you don't.
Yeah, I think people realize, in 2020, just how things are going to be, especially with all the defund the police movements. And I always say it, but like we've talked about this in other videos because it was a relevant topic, and it still is. But that's what really sparked people into becoming first-time gun buyers. Yeah. Getting those tools so they were able to take care of themselves and not rely on somebody else. And that's the big thing I think that's been changing, like with hearts and minds, is, hey, I need to be more self-reliant. That's what we always preach on this channel, is being a self-reliant individual and being able to take care of yours and your own, right? It's a simple thing. It's a simple concept.
It's a fact.
I mean, but anyways, I think we've covered what needs to be covered.
But
I mean,
the culture's changing for the better.
Absolutely.
And I think that's good energy. Let's keep that energy going, right? Be an ambassador to the Second Amendment. Be the change you want to see, right? You want to see more gun owners? Talk to more people, Let people see the kind of person you are. Be a cool guy about it, a cool girl about it, whoever you are. Be cool about it and be an ambassador. And over time, people are going to go, well, you know what? That person's not wrong. Like, they get it. They understand. So I think people are getting there. And I wanted to, make this gun gripe with Chad because we were kind of talking about this. We thought it would make a good gun gripe. So we really appreciate everybody tuning in today. We hope you enjoyed today's video. If you are a new gun owner or first-time gun buyer, we've got a ton of content on this channel. So if you want to go down the rabbit hole, make sure you click that notification bell. Go ahead and subscribe. Check out our content. We've got tons of different stuff, very educational, all the way from fun to educational. We do a little bit of everything. But if you're new to guns and you want to learn about guns, this is a great way to do it here on the channel. And there's tons of other great content creators on YouTube as well. I can't name them all, and if I start rattling people off, I'm going to leave them out. But there's a ton of awesome gun content here on the platform that you
Not
should
Tim.
totally look into.
Not Tim though.
Who?
Don't go to Military Arms channel.
Oh yeah.
We don't like that.
Don't
guy.
subscribe to Military Arms. No, actually, you should definitely. See, now you had to go there.
What?
There's a ton of
always
great
gotta poke
content
Tim.
creators that you certainly have to check out. Maybe we'll make a little short list in the description box.
You mean
below.
maybe I'll make a little
You
short
will.
list. You're making more work
Chad,
for me.
Chad does the editing, but anyway, there's tons of great content out there. Don't be afraid to just check it out and learn from it and be better informed, a more well-informed gun owner. That's a really crucial thing. Have a great day. Many more videos on the way. We really appreciate you watching. We'll see you soon.
See you guys.